Have you ever wondered why some comedians grow endlessly while others burn out before they even hit their stride? Well, there's a reason for that, and it has nothing to do with talent, but it has everything to do with what I call comedy capacity. I'm Manny Garavito, and this video is for anyone that wants to understand comedy on a deeper level. Whether you're a stand up comedian, a writer, a creator, or someone who wants to be naturally funnier in their everyday life, this concept is important because it explains why your humor hits a ceiling when you're only doing it for yourself, and why it becomes limitless when you learn how to share the laughs instead of just chasing them. So, in this video, I'm going to break down 2 stages every comedian goes through and how to recognize where you are, and how to expand your capacity so your humor becomes more free, more natural, and a bit more connected. Because once you understand how comedy moves through you instead of for you, everything about your sense of humor changes. All right, let's jump into it. So, when most comedians get started, the whole motivation is validation. You want attention, you want recognition, and you want people to see you as the funniest person that ever lived. It's a very self incentivized stage of your humor. You want to be the funniest one on stage, and yeah, there's a part of you that does get inspiration outside of yourself. You might imitate your favorite comedian, or hear a joke that inspires you to write a new one, or maybe something that you see in a movie makes you want to do a sketch for social media. All that still lives inside of a self serving version of comedy. But none of it matters. If you still want to be known for being the funniest person ever, that's a very difficult hurdle to overcome. And if that becomes the only frame you have as an incentive to becoming a comedian, your capacity to be funny actually becomes capped. So here's what I mean. When you operate from self serving comedy, the limits you hit are basically like the friction you get in yourself. Your whole identity becomes, I need to be the funniest person. And you start thinking like this from a place that actually kills your ability to grow. For example, envy. This is probably one of the most popular feelings that most comedians get in the industry. This is one of those common feelings when people get into comedy, they start comparing themselves to everyone else and they start feeling resentful towards each other, their fellow comedians and the achievements they get. And this is where you start convincing yourself that they don't deserve what they got, but somehow you do. And of course, this comes from scarcity thinking. You start to believe that the industry only has a limited amount of opportunities, or the audience has so many members in it that if someone else gets those audience members on their side, or if those opportunities are taking up, that means you lost them both. And then after that, things kind of get competitive. And I mean, in the worst way. You want to outperform everyone, win at all costs, and you treat comedy like a race instead of some art form that you need to discover within yourself. And look, I'm no psychologist, but I can definitely say that comedy attracts a little bit of narcissism, a little main character energy, that feeling of, I need to be the best and most important person in the room or bust. And that vibe drains you, and it drains everyone else around you. Then on a more personal level, you start fearing the bomb. You worry about being the least funniest person in the lineup. You worry your jokes maybe aren't good enough. And that pressure of self-sabotage starts to creep in. And then overall, you just stop having fun. And another big one, once you start getting into this side of the friction, is you start people pleasing. When the gatekeepers start showing up, they give you a hard time. You bend over backwards. You kiss a little boot here and there. You say yes to things that usually cross your boundaries just to get one step closer toward whatever self-serving journey that you're trying to achieve. Then comes perfectionism. Everything has to be flawless. Your online persona, your stage work, your offstage behavior. You act like TMZ is right around the corner, or somebody's going to take the wrong photo of you from the audience. And you start looking around for something that might expose you for not being as funny as you think you are. Even just that one bad joke that ended up on YouTube might end your whole career. Eventually, the mask starts to crack and you start realizing that you're being vulnerable and perfection might not be that funny. And finally, outcome addiction. You only feel like a comedian when you win something big. That competition, you went viral. Kill Tony said that you won the golden ticket. Anything less than that, and you convince yourself that you're a failure as a comedian. On the other hand, when your comedy starts expanding beyond yourself, everything changes. Sure, there's still a bit of self incentive in there. You still got to personal brand yourself. You still need to be funny on stage, but that's no longer the ceiling. Your identity as the funny one stops being the finish line, and you start doing comedy in a different way that actually connects with people. This is where comedy becomes something bigger than you. People don't laugh at your jokes, they feel where your humor comes from. You become the instrument instead of the whole show itself. The laughter flows through you, not because of you. Over time, great comedians naturally outgrow the self-serving part of their comedy journey, and they realize that comedy is an exchange of joy, not a joke for laugh transaction. So here's where you have more room to grow because you're no longer trapped inside your own ego. So you might be wondering, why does this give you more opportunities? Well, it's because it's synergistic. Everything works together. Your writing evolves, your delivery becomes better, your presence deepens, and people actually want to work with you. Doors simply open because you're not weighed down by small, trivial stuff anymore, and people can pick up on that. You're developing as a person, and what you talk about as a comedian reflects that. Think about comedians who get better as they get older. Their material changes, and you can see that over the years. They become more grounded, more emotionally intelligent, more human, and the industry responds to that. People feel comfortable giving those kinds of comedians the spotlight because they feel they bring some sort of connection to an audience. So when you move past the self-serving phase, people start noticing that and they start getting curious. And what they observe when you talk about the things you talk about, your comedy is actually coming from a place that's really in your character. And you begin pointing out human behavior that everyone else can recognize, not just your personal experiences. You also gain a little bit of empathy. You start to understand another person's world and you write jokes from their angle, and the audience feels deeply understood by that. I've been in rooms where a comedian delivers a line and I thought I was the only one that thought that. I guess everyone does. How did you know that? And that's empathy turning the personal into the universal. Then comes presence. You own the room not because of your identity, but because of the fun you're about to share with everyone, and everyone knows you by that. Same thing on a podcast, in a sketch, online, anywhere your humor lives, people can just feel that your presence is there to give satisfaction. And then there's gratitude. You don't come off like the world owes you a career. You show up thankful for the opportunity, and people can also feel that. Gratitude makes the audience root for your success because in turn, it makes them feel successful for being someone speaking the truth that they want to laugh about. Oh, and one of my favorite parts when you start expanding your comedy capacity is creativity. That's where you start experimenting. You push the boundaries. You find new layers of what you find funny because you're not taking yourself so seriously anymore. You become playful again, and that energy is definitely contagious. And the biggest benefit of all this is freedom. You stop doing comedy for approval or for a specific person. You do it more for the sake of comedy itself. The fun part, there's so much space here, so many ways to express yourself that freedom becomes a byproduct of finally becoming your own comedian. And that leads to purpose. Your work outlives you because it had direction. You started off with one voice and it developed to a completely different one. It had something that humans kind of can resonate with over time, that connected people beyond your identity. That's why the greats live forever. Even if their material is a bit dated, they had something real to say during their time, and people can still feel it to this day. That's the power of expanding your comedy capacity. So once I started operating from this comedy capacity, I've just been able to do so much more with my sense of humor freely. I don't even worry about trolls online. I don't worry what the audience thinks. I don't worry about what my social media followers want or what the algorithm wants. Completely disregard gatekeepers. I avoid open micers that are just toxic. And this is one of the most freeing things that I've ever done in my comedy career, when I realized that I'm not the reason I'm funny. I'm just someone conducting funny through one little drop of what being funny is in the first place. Comedy is something that lives in all of us as humans, and all we're doing is just sharing a little bit of that. We're not the end all be all, and that's great news for your comedy career. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you like this video, check out my other videos on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.